In the spring of 1990, shortly after the fall of the Berlin Wall, 3 young Russians head to East Berlin in Russendisco, an offbeat comedy now in German cinemas. Hi and welcome to Kino. We'll have more on Russendisco coming up later. But first we take a look at the latest film by Volker Schlöndorff. The acclaimed German director is known for tackling difficult topics, and his latest effort is no exception. Calm at Sea is an unflinching look at a dark chapter of the German occupation of France during World War II.
Nantes, 1941. A German officer of the occupation forces is shot and killed by French communists, and the wheels of fate are set in motion. Berlin demands reprisals.
Der Führer erwartet die Erschießung von etwa 150 Geiseln.
Die Zahl ist erschreckend.
This is
actually an authentic case, and it's very well known in France. Essentially, it was the moment the resistance was born. Up till then, for 1.5 years, the German occupation had been quite peaceful.
It's this turning point that Volker Schlöndorff examines in Calm at Sea. It tells the story of 17-year-old Guy Moquet, who's been sent to a camp for political prisoners in Brittany on a petty offence. He's one of the hostages condemned to death.
Les derniers. Docteur Ténine, Maurice et Moquet, Guy.
Ah non, c'est le plus jeune.
Guy Moquet is something of a national icon in France. His farewell letter is required reading in schools.
Adieu.
Je vous quitte tous, toutes. Toi, maman, et Serge, papa. En vous embrassant de tout mon cœur d'enfant.
Volker Schlöndorff himself first heard this tragic story as a young man.
I first came to France as a 17-year-old in 1956 to learn French, as it happened in the very place this occurred. The war had been over for only 10 or 11 years, so the events were very fresh.
Schlöndorff nimbly interweaves the drama of Guy Moquet with 2 German perspectives. The script is based on a book by Ernst Jünger and early stories by Heinrich Böll. Böll, played by Jakob Matschens, was a war-weary German soldier in the occupation forces. Ernst Jünger was very much the writer in uniform. As an officer, he played a key part in organizing the mass execution. One of the film's highlights is Ulrich Mattes, who plays this quiet observer with a cool precision. All blame and responsibility seem to bounce off him.
Die Personen der zur Erschießung Bestimmten sind aus mehreren Geisellisten ausgewählt. Kommunistische Abgeordnete, Freischärler, Gewerkschaftssekretäre sowie wegen Gewalttaten gegen deutsche Soldaten Festgenommene. Unter den Kommunisten befinden sich auch einige Juden.
Natürlich Of course, he was a highly intelligent man. He was able to observe things very closely, reflect on them, and write them down. Even so, I think he was less endowed with any ability to empathize.
This film doesn't dwell on the brutality. Instead, it treats it as the inevitable conclusion of a clockwork series of events. Murder is a result of bureaucratic procedures.
Der Sanitäter wird einen weißen Stofffetzen an die entsprechende Stelle kleben. Aber erst nachdem die Augen verbunden sind. Ja, ersparen Sie sich bitte das Gelächter, steht so in der Dienstvorschrift 35-213. Fragen? Keine.
Das ist diese Art von
This is that horrendous way of following orders that apparently starts functioning immediately in a totalitarian system. It functions very easily within a hierarchy.
Und zwar innerhalb einer Hierarchie ganz leicht zu funktionieren.
My superior gave me the order, I carry it out.
Ich mache es.
Who is good and who is evil? Schlöndorff skillfully dodges the clichés. There are doubting Germans, just as there are denouncing French. They're all perpetrators and victims of war, cogs in a murderous machine.
Volker Schlöndorff has had a remarkable career, but it might have looked very different if it weren't for the Oberhausen Manifesto. 50 years ago, 26 film professionals pledged to create alternatives to the sentimental mass entertainment that dominated the post-war West German cinema landscape. Their artistically sophisticated films helped pave the way for what's known as New German Cinema.
In the 1950s, German cinemas ran a steady stream of musicals and romance in pastoral settings. A group of young filmmakers saw German cinema as an artistic and intellectual disaster. They began making radically different short films, looking at the legacy of the Nazi period and post-war reconstruction. They had a truth and directness lacking in the mainstream cinema of the day. International critics were full of praise, but the filmmakers wanted more. In 1962, they went on the offensive. In their Oberhausen Manifesto, presented at the Oberhausen Short Film Festival, they proclaimed the death of old cinema. At the center of the group was Alexander Kluge. His ambition was nothing less than the creation of a new film language, as he attempted in his own films.
At the time, the whole system was mass production. Films were welded together from parts. You bought in actors, a script, and stuck them together, even if they didn't fit. We found it disrespectful to the audiences and a hostile attitude towards film.
It didn't take long for the directors to translate the success of their short films into the feature-length format. Kluge's debut film, Yesterday Girl, won a Silver Lion at the 1966 Venice Film Festival. It's the story of a young woman from East Germany who flees to the West, but fails to adjust and ends up in jail.
Wann sind Sie geboren? 2.4.37. Und wo bitte? Leipzig.
The experimental language of the film borrows heavily from the French Nouvelle Vague. Kluge and other representatives of the New German cinema identified with the way the French were redefining the role of the filmmaker.
The auteur, as opposed to the director, pays more attention to what's going on in front of the camera. The auteur isn't a dictator, a circus trainer, or a gardener. He's a gatherer. He respects the action, the actors, and the camera for themselves. It's a cooperative process.
These ideas continue to inspire today's filmmakers, like those of what's known as the Berlin School. This loose group includes Christoph Hochhäusler, a co-founder of the magazine Revolver. Like the Oberhausen Manifesto, it speaks out against stage commercial filmmaking.
Wir müssen ja absperren.
The directors of the Berlin School often ask a lot of their audiences. They want viewers to observe closely and look for things left unsaid, which can be a challenge. The films can be uncompromising, even severe.
I don't want to make a clunky film. If I've made some things that are clumsy, then I apologize for that. It's not my aim. But in terms of subject matter, of course, many of these films are difficult. And that's reflected in their form.
One trademark of these filmmakers is lengthy shots. Hochhäusler's film, I Am Guilty, focuses on a young man's uneasy self-discovery. He writes confessions, taking responsibility for accidents he had nothing to do with. The film avoids the spectacular and sensational. As such, it has a lot in common with the New German cinema of the 1970s.
Film is as valid as ever as a means of exploration and analysis.
But that idea is also as unpopular as ever, at least with those who provide the funding. Fiction film is very stubborn in that regard. It's governed by incredibly strict conventions, where there shouldn't be any. We know that film is a beast beyond rules.
Breaking the conventions and finding fresh forms. Those are aims shared by Alexander Kluge and Christoph Hochhäusler. They remain just as valid today. This year, the Oberhausen Film Festival is showing a retrospective of the short subjects that revitalized German cinema half a century ago. And today's filmmakers can still learn from them.
The Oberhausen Short Film Festival starts at the end of this month. You can find out more on the Arts and Culture page at dw.de. Today, our shortcuts introduce us to a bunch of unusual characters, including an alien in a diving suit, oddball Berlin explorers, and actor Christian Ulmen as Bruno.
Bruno is Radost's father. But he's mentally handicapped and has the intellectual level of a child. So his 13-year-old daughter looks after him on her own. A big responsibility.
Warum muss ich denn immer so streng sein und du so doof?
Du willst doch, dass wir weiterhin zusammen wohnen dürfen, oder?
Hallo? Ich bin der Papa.
Things get tough when she falls in love.
Das ist Benny aus meiner Klasse.
Okay.
Papa?
Okay, was ist das? Kennst du den?
Elefant?
Ja.
This story of an unusual father-daughter relationship starts off as a comedy, but it takes a tragic turn as Radost hits puberty. When she returns from a school trip, the situation escalates. She faces the difficult choice between sacrificing her own future for her father or following her own dreams.
Alles war gut und so soll es bleiben gut.
Weil du dich nicht verändern kannst, soll ich das auch nicht? Ist also dein Plan für mein Leben?
Für unser Leben.
The film is hardly a masterpiece, but it is a touching father-daughter comedy drama.
71-year-old Klaus Lemke is not a man of modest gestures. To his followers, he's a star, an underground cowboy who's danced to his own tune for 40 years, improvising with non-professionals without public funding. This time, he's plunged into the world of Berlin's super cool. True to his motto, forget the plot, it's the attitude that counts.
Mein Ex.
The film is full of hipsters and weirdos living in the now in a tangle of relationships.
Also du freust dich auch wirklich jedes Mal, wenn du mich siehst, oder? Ich bin ja auch wirklich zum Verlieben.
This brash Berlin glam fest is more trash than transcendent. But for Lemke's fans, it's further proof of the director's wayward genius.
Weißt du, wie lange du jetzt schon bei uns bist?
Keine Ahnung.
The Sams, a creature with red hair and a pig's nose, is back with all his or her old friends.
10 Jahre bist du jetzt hier, bei Mama und Papa, Taschengeld.
And 10 years may well be all the Sams will get with its adopted family. Its fellow creatures in the pig-nose universe have revealed a rather scary secret.
Wenn ein Sams 10 Jahre, 10 Tage, 10 Stunden und 10 Minuten bei einem Menschen lebt, geschieht etwas sehr Besonderes.
The humans mutate into Sams. Father Taschenbier is quite amused.
Ich hab's geahnt! Du bist ein Sams! Aber das darf niemand wissen. Abgemacht. Samsgeheimnis Nummer.
The third film version of Paul Mar's popular children's books has the makings of another box office hit. The first two brought in some 3 million viewers each.
Na, du hast alle Knöpfe gedrückt und zwar gleichzeitig!
It sees the filmmakers return to the tried and tested recipe of fantasy mixed with situation comedy.
Children's films are popular in Germany, and this one was among the most successful of 2011. In Vicky and the Treasure of the Gods, the little Viking uses his smarts and humor to tackle his biggest challenge yet. If you'd like a chance to win a DVD, just write to us and tell us what you think of Kino. Here's our email address: kino@dw.de. The early 1990s, the years right after the fall of the wall, were a very exciting time in Berlin. And it was right here in the eastern part of the city that young Russian Vladimir Kamina ended up. His collection of short stories about that era became a bestseller. And now it's been turned into a film comedy that captures the spirit of those wild days.
No cost was spared for the premiere of Russendisco. Center stage went to the film's stars. They play three Russians who set out to retake Berlin after the fall of the wall.
Misha, André und ich kamen im Sommer 1990 in Ostberlin an. Wir wussten sofort, hier waren wir richtig. Alle waren so glücklich und noch 6 Monate nach der Wiener Vereinigung am Feiern. In Wirklichkeit war nur Fußball-Weltmeisterschaft.
Russendisco, or Russian disco, is set in the brief time between the fall of the Berlin Wall and reunification, a time of transition and a bit of anarchy.
Ich heiße Sie als Mitglied einer aus der Sowjetunion geflüchteten Volksminderheit bei uns in der DDR willkommen. Jede Minute gibt es hier eine neue Durchführungsbestimmung. Meine Herren, genießen Sie die letzten Wochen der Deutschen Demokratischen Republik.
The old order has collapsed, but the new one has yet to take hold. With tongue firmly in cheek, Russendisco follows Misha, Andrei, and Vladimir as they make their way through dubious business ideas, stormy romances, and lots of music from the old country. The back room of a bar is an ideal place to party. The Russian disco is born, and Vladimir becomes a DJ. The real-life Vladimir Kaminer, the creator of Russendisco, did much of this in reality, and he still does. He worked in the theater in Russia. Then he came to Berlin, looked around, and, with his eye for the whimsical, wrote down what he saw in 52 short stories. They appeared together under the title Russian Disco in 2000, became a surprise bestseller, and made Kaminer a cult author. He kept out of the film adaptation process, but he likes the result, and even played a cameo. Now Russian Disco has turned into something like his signature style.
It all started very modestly, and now it's become a film. Now we're art. Basically, I like it. In the beginning was pure life, then a bit of dancing, that turned into literature, and now we're on the silver screen. Suddenly I'm seeing famous German actors saying my lines. It's a funny feeling.
Meine Sätze sagen. Das ist ein merkwürdiges Gefühl.
Was machen wir? Wir verkaufen Dosenbier und werden richtig reich. Richtig reich! Ah, nicht gerade nach
Some critics wondered why Russian immigrants should be played by German actors. But in our opinion, the film version captures the spirit of Kaminer's book. The lead trio have real chemistry and managed to carry the movie. But one thing doesn't ring true: the entirely fictional love story between the hero Vladimir and Olga.
Danke. Wofür denn? Naja, dass du zufällig an mir vorbeigelaufen bist.
Director Oliver Ziegenbalg decided to make his Berlin lavish and nostalgic, rather than an authentic reproduction of the city of 1990.
The question is, how authentic does a film like this have to be? If I say completely, then they'd have to be Russians who speak Russian, and then 80% of the movie would be in Russian. Then it would have to be the Berlin that existed in 1990, which you can no longer find. Under these conditions, it's obvious the film could never have been made. So I thought I'd break free of that and create an impression of Berlin, a nostalgic look at Berlin, the way people of today might see and talk about the time back then.
Seid ihr Russen? Ja. Russischer Halsabschneider!
Ich darf Sie bitten, mit uns zu kommen.
Russendisco is mainstream entertainment cinema. Witty dialogue, an impressive production, and hit Russian music. It's a funny tale of immigration. A feel-good movie.
The German cinema world will be looking to Berlin at the end of this month when the German Film Awards will be presented. The nominations have been announced, so now let's take a look at our favorites to win the top prizes.
The German Film Academy is not afraid of pomp. It rolled out the red carpet to announce this year's nominations. Making the shortlist isn't just an honor, it's worth €250,000 to producers vying for Best Film. Barbara looks certain to get at least one Lola. It's nominated in 8 categories, including Best Screenplay and Best Director. Christian Petzold's drama focuses on a doctor in 1980s East Germany. When she applies to leave for the West, she's banished to the provinces.
Das ist Frau Dr. Wolf. Sie arbeitet ab heute hier bei uns in der Kirche.
The film already caused a stir at this year's Berlin Film Festival, where it won a Silver Bear.
Sie sollten sich nicht so separieren. Die Leute hier sind sehr empfindlich.
The secret police are everywhere. Barbara feels pursued at every turn. The film is a pitch-perfect study of life in a totalitarian state.
Kleiner Ausflug gemacht. Eine schöne Gegend hier. Besonders nachts.
The German Film Prize is the country's most valuable cultural award, endowed with €3 million in prize money. It's an important way of supporting the domestic film industry and great advertising for its products.
The award is a major boost for the artists, and it has the effect of bringing people to the cinema to see films, possibly for a second time. So overall, it's a big help to the film industry.
Aside from 7 nominations each, these 2 films could hardly be more different. With Anonymous, Roland Emmerich ratchets up the historical bombast, while Andreas Dresen directed Stopped on Track, a low-key family drama about cancer. Stopped on Track tells how one man comes to terms with the diagnosis of a terminal brain tumor. It's a real test for his family.
Mama, was ist los? Was ist los? Papa geht's nicht so gut.
True to life, without sentimentality, Dresen captures people's reactions in the face of death.
Ist das wahr, dass du stirbst?
It's a far cry from the world of Anonymous. Roland Emmerich's film puts forward a spectacular version of Shakespeare's career. It claims that the bard didn't actually write his plays. Instead, they were the work of a nobleman, the Earl of Oxford, with Shakespeare, a struggling actor, just a stooge.
In my world, one does not write plays. William Shakespeare. People like you do.
It's an opulent tale of intrigue, murder, and jealousy. The film is an international production. But for the Film Academy, what counts is its German director and the fact that it was mostly shot at a studio near Berlin.
One basic function of the Film Academy is to give a clear signal with the Lolas that German cinema is very much alive and that it has real scope. There are big films with quality and small discoveries with quality. We can tell people, go to the cinema. You're in for a pleasant surprise.
ihr werdet immer wieder positiv überrascht werden.
The Academy's 3,000 members will decide who gets the awards. But the consensus already seems to be that this was a good year.
What's unusual is the diversity of the projects. They're all quite different, and among the nominees we have films that are debuts that started out small and then gathered momentum, like Combat Girls.
Combat Girls is a first-time feature on a hard-hitting issue. Director David Vnent paints a terrifying picture of Germany's young neo-Nazi scene. The sheer diversity of the nominees just goes to show that German cinema seems to be healthier than ever.
That's all from us for now, but we'll be back next month when we'll tell you all about who the big winners were at the German Film Awards. Until then, I'll see you at the movies.